Yeah, so firstly, it's 28 pages of pure garbage. I would encourage viewers to really read through the document itself. It's very easy to read because of its lack of evidence and empirical data and so forth. So it's very accessible to read.
The Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation has conducted an impact assessment on the Expropriation Bill, but it seems as if the department has been reluctant to make this document available to the public. So business lobby group Sakeliga has issued a PIRE application requesting access to this document. I'm joined by Sakeliga's legal fellow, Martin van Staden, to discuss the reasons for this application and also some of the concerns that Sakeliga has with the contents of this impact assessment. Martin, welcome back to the CRA channel. Could you tell our viewers the background context to your PIRE application and some of your initial observations?
Yeah, so I mean, I think viewers are well aware of the issues of the expropriation bill itself and the economic consequences that at least we with rational heads on our shoulders know that a policy of its kind, like expropriation without compensation, will lead to in the economy. And a few months ago, around March, we realized that there has been no impact study conducted by government on the expropriation bill. It's a separate question about the constitutional amendment. There is no SIA for that still, so we're working on that as well. But we sent a Promotion of Access to Information Act request to the Department of Public Works, which is responsible for the expropriation bill, and asked them, where is the SIA? And this week we received our answer, and we received the so-called study that they did, which is dated 2019 and 2020. But we realized that this has not been published, or if it was published in some obscure government magazine or government gazette, then it certainly was not accessible to the general public, which is the intended audience of a impact assessment. It's for ordinary South Africans to know before a policy is adopted what its likely consequences would be for the economy, for society, and also to discuss some of the potential unintended consequences that might flow from the policy being adopted. So it's by its nature something that the public needs to have access to. So this is not the first time that we've seen government essentially withhold a socioeconomic impact assessment. In this year, it's the second time. The first bill was the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, which was marked as secret, which was interesting. But so this is a trend that government has been going on. And really with the, first maybe a point on the importance of a SIA. I mean, the public needs to know that what government is adopting isn't just a thumbsuck. It's not just an ideological preference. The public needs to know that what government is doing is evidence-based. It's based on empirical, observable evidence. It's based on peer-reviewed research, etc., and that it's not just a political opinion. So for that reason, a SIA is important. But the SIA on the expropriation bill does not tick any of those quality assurance standards, despite it being approved by the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, which is responsible for overseeing the SIA process, despite being approved by the presidency's own policy research unit and by the Department of Public Works itself. This has now been made available, even though it is riddled with issues.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
Martin, what are some of the main concerns that Sakeliga has with this impact assessment and the way that it's been conducted?
So firstly, it's 28 pages of pure garbage. I would encourage viewers to really read through the document itself. It's very easy to read because of its lack of evidence and empirical data and so forth. So it's very accessible to read. But I'm only going to focus on some of the main points that I've jotted down. And I guess the first thing is that the drafters of the SIA, essentially the Department of Public Works, wish to create the impression that civil society almost unanimously supports the expropriation bill. Of course, all government departments were consulted and they all supported, including the police and the Department of Arts and Culture. Very relevant, I guess. But from civil society, a few organizations are mentioned, but notable exceptions include the Institute of Race Relations, which was at the very forefront of fighting against the expropriation bill, and which in fact had the bill withdrawn several years ago as part of its public participation process. The IRR is not mentioned once. The Free Market Foundation engaged quite rigorously on the expropriation bill. It is not mentioned once. And Sakeliga, of course, has also noted various concerns of the expropriation bill over the past few years. It is not mentioned once. Only organizations which the Department of Public Works says support the bill are mentioned. And that's an issue because there certainly is not unanimous support for the bill. But the concerns, it's another element of dishonesty from the SIA. All of these organizations, or most of them, that supposedly support the bill, in fact, have concerns with the bill, and they are somewhat addressed in the SIA. But the drafters conclude on each point that those concerns are misplaced, and that those concerns will not be taken into account in the drafting of the bill. And an example of this is something that I believe various of these organizations noted, was that investor confidence in South Africa will be harmed by this bill because of the way it makes expropriation easier for government, because of its allowance now of confiscation of property without compensation. And the only thing that the drafters of the SIA say is that there is no empirical evidence for such an assertion, even though it is on its face true. Anyone with property will not invest where that property could be easily taken. So that's one example. Another thing that's quite interesting is that the expropriation bill mentions that the 1975 Expropriation Act, which it replaces, was unfair to property owners, and that might be true. But the drafters conclude that this bill is the answer to that. This will be more fair to property owners, despite the fact that the expropriation bill, as it stands, has fewer safeguards than the 1975 Expropriation Act, including it removes solatium, payment for inconvenience. It brings in, as we know, confiscation of property without compensation, which did not used to exist. So that is, of course, total nonsense. And primarily what a SIA is supposed to be, as I mentioned earlier, is that it's supposed to be a cost-benefit analysis, and none of that happens in this document. It essentially says that there will only be benefits all around for everyone, even property owners whose property are expropriated. The SIA says will benefit from so-called social cohesion and economic inclusivity, even though you are now without your property and perhaps even without any compensation. You are a beneficiary. Total garbage and nonsense. But the only major costing exercise that the SIA does is to say that these greedy owners of property will be litigating against expropriation, and government might have some litigation costs to take into account. It says nothing of the cost to the economy, of cost to investment, of cost to food security. It makes no mention of that. Citizens and the public have no cost to a confiscatory legal regime. Only government has litigation costs. And of course, that is simply nonsense. And then finally, just from the highlights, is that the bill, the SIA lists various random things as benefits that will accrue as a result of the adoption of the bill. For instance, there will be increased access to housing, there will be more entrepreneurship, there will be more employment in South Africa. None of this has anything to do with expropriation law or the expropriation bill. You can read it. It says nothing about housing and employment and entrepreneurship. It has nothing to do with that. Yet these are slated as benefits. Now, I think the only conclusion that we can reach is that the drafters really had no real benefits to include. for such a law because there are no benefits for a non-property rights respecting legal regime. And they simply added filler nonsense that has nothing to do with the bill. And really these things that I've just mentioned really permeate all 28 pages of the SIA, making it very much nothing more in our view than a long opinion article about essentially a socialist article saying how great expropriation is for the public interest without really having any data, evidence, or arguments to support such a ludicrous assertion. So it's a bunch of nonsense, and we're not sure you can call it an impact assessment. It is really just a propaganda piece.
Martin van Staden, thank you very much for joining us on the CRA channel. We'll put a link to that impact assessment report in the description below, as well as in the pinned comment. We'll also link to Sakeliga's press release. If you enjoyed this analysis, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. My name is David Ansara. This is the Center for Risk Analysis. Until next time, take care.